Kính thưa quý vị, chúng tôi là fan quan trọng từ chương trình Diễn đàn Chính Luận. Xin kính chào quý vị. Hôm nay chúng tôi có một vị khách đặc biệt là ông Phil Robertson. Ông hiện là phó giám đốc của tổ chức theo dõi nhân quyền Human Rights Watch tại địa phận châu Á. Trách nhiệm chính của ông Robertson là giám sát công việc của tổ chức trên khắp châu Á và đặc biệt tập trung vào Đông Nam Á và bán đảo Triều Tiên. Với vai trò là người ủng hộ nhân quyền, ông tham dự vào các hoạt động và thường có những buổi họp với các quan chức của chính phủ và cơ quan Liên Hợp Quốc. Ông là phát ngôn nhân đại diện cho tổ chức theo dõi nhân quyền về quan điểm của tổ chức và ông thường xuyên đóng góp trên các phương tiện truyền thông quốc tế và viết các bản báo cáo vi phạm nhân quyền tại Đông Nam Á. Ông là một nhà hoạt động chiến lược trong các trường hợp vi phạm nhân quyền nghiêm trọng, đồng thời là nhà nghiên cứu và nhà báo chuyên viết về các chủ đề nhân quyền, quyền lao động, quyền của người tị nạn và di cư. Và trước khi làm việc cho tổ chức theo dõi nhân quyền năm 2009, ông Robertson đã hoạt động hơn 15 năm tại Đông Nam Á trong lĩnh vực nhân quyền, quyền của người lao động, bảo vệ công nhân lao động nước ngoài và ngay cả trong khía cạnh buôn người. Ông nói thông thạo hai ngôn ngữ là tiếng Thái và tiếng Lào. Mr. Robertson, thanks for your time for today.
Of course.
And thanks for your effort and Human Rights Watch mission worldwide. I understand that your mission is to defend the rights of people, and you have relentlessly investigated abuses, exposed the facts widely, and pressure those with power to respect rights and secure justice. And out of these three core values, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think that I still think that the pressure, the ability to pressure those in power is one of the most difficult thing. What is your thought about this?
Well, thank you very much for having me on the show, first of all. Greatly appreciate your time and for inviting me on.
Yes, sir.
Working for Human Rights Watch in Southeast Asia is very challenging. Countries like Vietnam are very, very difficult to deal with. This is a government, a single party state, which is getting much worse in terms of the repression that it's bringing against people who are voicing their opinions about what the government is doing or demanding reforms, pointing out corruption, all those basic things that you would assume a government would want to know, that, ordinary citizens pointing out that, hey, that guy is corrupt. Hey, that project doesn't work. Hey, something's wrong over here. But the Vietnam government views that kind of talk as dissidence and as anti-state, as something that becomes a national security crime. And we are seeing a real intensification of the reaction against people who are speaking up. Like the Vietnam government is singularly determined to try to wipe out any sign of criticism or dissidence within Vietnam. And that's very sad. And so, we're spending a lot of time trying to understand the various cases of individuals who are facing long prison sentences, and the sentences are getting much longer. We are, working where we can with the families, assuming the family wants to work with us and they feel it's safe to do so. And we're trying to bring attention to the cases of these people facing these prison sentences. We just saw Bùi Thuận Lam sent to prison for 5.5 years.
Right.
For a number of Facebook pages, but really the reason they went after him was because he dared to ridicule the Minister of Public Security for his $2,000 gold-encrusted steak.
Right.
So by speaking up, we're trying to give a voice to people who, unfortunately, the international media and the diplomats are not paying enough attention to. So we're trying to put the spotlight back on the cases of these people and demand justice for them.
Yes. Thưa quý vị, vừa rồi chúng tôi hỏi là tổ chức theo dõi nhân quyền bảo vệ quyền con người của người dân trên toàn thế giới, họ điều tra cẩn thận các hành vi lạm dụng, rồi phơi bày sự thật một cách rộng rãi và gây áp lực buộc các người có quyền lực phải tôn trọng quyền con người. Nhưng mà chúng tôi cũng hỏi ông là tại sao cái việc áp lực các nhà cầm quyền, độc tài tôn trọng nhân quyền lại khó khăn như vậy? Thì ông nói là đặc biệt là trong trường hợp Việt Nam là rất là khó khăn, là tại vì đây là một chính quyền độc tài. Và họ đã xem những cái người mà chẳng hạn như lên tiếng về những cái vụ tham nhũng tại Việt Nam như là một cái hình thức tấn công chính quyền, và họ đã đưa ra những cái bản án rất là nặng nề. Cái công việc của tổ chức theo dõi nhân quyền là tìm đủ mọi cách để để mà cộng đồng thế giới cũng giống như là những người làm việc trong lĩnh vực ngoại giao biết được cái nỗi khó khăn của những cái người mà nói lên cái quyền con người tại nhất là xứ sở như là Việt Nam. Mr. Robertson, according to the 88 project, this is one of the project we kind of tracking the prisoner of conscience. We estimated there's nearly 200 activists were in prison in Vietnam. And there are
Yes.
more than, yes, sir, and more than 300 activists may be the target for apprehension. I know Human Rights Watch follow them very closely. And in most cases, your organization have exposed these illegal arrests. And it is obviously that the government of Vietnam, like you said, has no respect for their peaceful rights, especially the right to express, to worship, etc. So what is Human Rights Watch strategy to defend the rights of people in the case of Vietnam?
Well, we're doing a number of things. It's a very good question. First of all, we're trying to point out the very, very big gap between what the laws of Vietnam say and what their international human rights obligations are. Vietnam has this kind of funny way of saying that, well, you know, if something is in Vietnam law, that means it must be in line with human rights principles. And it's very clear that there's no connection between the two. Right. If we have something like Article 331 of the Penal Code, which penalizes using democratic freedoms that infringe the interests of the state, you can see very clearly that there's no real intent by the Vietnam government to comply with their obligations under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which is one of the major UN human rights treaties, and a treaty that Vietnam voluntarily ratified. Right. You know, and so they're obligated to follow that. So we're pointing out the hypocrisy of the Vietnam government, first and foremost. We're also trying to point out significant trends that may have eluded the international community. They haven't spent enough time paying attention to what's going on in Vietnam. One of those, for instance, is a report that we brought out last year about restrictions on the right to freedom of movement, right. Where there's an effort to keep dissidents in their neighborhoods, in their homes, in some cases locking them in their homes, restricting their ability to travel domestically as well as internationally, not giving them documents, harassing and arresting them when they try to go somewhere. You know, I recall the case when President Barack Obama went to Hanoi, invited several high-profile activists and dissidents.
I remember.
And only about half of them were able to actually get to the U.S. Embassy to have the meeting with President Obama, because the rest of them were stopped and arrested by the police until the meeting time had passed, and then they were released. This is something that the government does systematically. And people, until we put out that report, said, oh, we hadn't thought about that, but it is a common practice. It is a system. Similarly, we're working on the issues of the kind of online harassment we're seeing. You know, of course, Task Force 47, the group of military trolls that are operating online to attack dissidents is something we're looking at. But we're also seeing a significant increase of repression online by the Vietnam government, because, you know, the Vietnam government controls the TV, it controls the radio. It controls all the newspapers and magazines, but the one thing it hasn't controlled up to now is the internet. And so a lot of people are able to get different sorts of news in Vietnam, and they don't like that. And so now they're moving to try to take control of the internet, and they're claiming they're acting against terrorism, or they're acting against pornography, or all these other things, but don't believe it. Really what they're after is they're after dissenting opinions that people are expressing online. And this is why we're seeing people sent to prison for 6, 8, 10 years for what they post online on Facebook and other places. It's an effort to try to once again restore Vietnam to a period of time when the Vietnam Communist Party controlled everything that the people could see, hear, and discuss. And they want to try to bring that back. But the problem is that is fundamentally incompatible with an outward-looking capitalist society that Vietnam has become. So, you know, in some ways, the Vietnam Communist Party is a dinosaur. You know, it's back in the the 1960s and 1970s. It's in some sort of crazy Stalinist past,
Right.
where they're trying to control everything that people see and think. And the problem is they're working so hard to do that. The first thing they're doing is putting a lot of people in prison for saying things that the government doesn't like.
Right. Thưa quý vị, vừa rồi chúng tôi hỏi ông Robertson là hiện nay có gần 200 tù nhân lương tâm và hơn 300 nhà hoạt động về nhân quyền có nguy cơ bị bắt và giam giữ. Và nhà cầm quyền Việt Nam trong nhiều năm qua đã không tôn trọng các quyền căn bản của con người. Như vậy, cái chiến lược của tổ chức theo dõi nhân quyền là gì để bảo vệ họ? Thì ông nói là thứ nhất là có một cái sự khác biệt trong cái điều luật cũng như là cái sự hiểu biết về nhân quyền, định nghĩa của nhân quyền tại Việt Nam cũng như là tại quốc tế. Rồi chính quyền Việt Nam gần như là có một chính sách gọi là cũng rất là giả dối, là chẳng hạn giống như là họ có cái điều luật là cấm đi lại chẳng hạn, và họ đã dùng cái điều luật đó để bắt những cái người mà bất đồng chính kiến phải ở một khu vực nào đó hoặc tại nhà. Và ông đưa lên cái trường hợp như là trường hợp ông Obama đến thăm Việt Nam, thì hơn một nửa những người mà tổng thống Obama mời đến gặp ông ta đó thì đã bị giam giữ tại nhà cho đến khi cái cuộc gặp gỡ đó xong đó, thì họ được thả ra. Như vậy đó, chính ông Robertson nói là những cái người hoạt động về lĩnh vực ngoại giao cũng như là về chính phủ phải hiểu rằng đây là một cái chính sách và phải nói là áp đặt một cách rất là có hệ thống của chính quyền Việt Nam. Chẳng hạn như chính quyền Việt Nam hầu như là kiểm soát được tất cả mọi mặt ngoại trừ cái mạng xã hội hoặc internet. Thì trong tương lai đó họ sẽ làm cái việc đó, và họ đã đưa những cái bản án rất là nặng nề cho những người mà lên internet để mà đưa ra những cái hình ảnh xấu xa tham nhũng của chính quyền. Có nhiều người bị tù từ 6 đến 10 năm chỉ là cái việc là đưa lên Facebook nói những cái chuyện như vậy. Sir, Mr. Robertson, I would like to take a short moment for some advertisement and we will be right back. Thưa quý vị, chúng tôi xin tạm ngưng chương trình trong giây lát cho các thông tin thương mại và xin trở lại với quý vị ngay lập tức. Thưa quý vị, xin kính chào quý vị trở lại với chương trình. Hôm nay chúng tôi có một cái buổi tiếp chuyện với ông Phó Giám đốc của Human Rights Watch, tổ chức theo dõi nhân quyền. Ông hiện đang sinh sống tại Bangkok, Thái Lan. Mr. Robertson, I know you stationed in Thailand, and you know the disappearance of blogger Thái Văn Đường in Bangkok on a broad daylight. In fact, I understand that you investigated the incident and also came to the exact location where Thai was disappeared. So can you share with us your finding?
I'd be happy to. First of all, it's quite clear that this was planned. He was taken on April 13th, about 6:15 in the evening. Wow. For people who are aware of the Thai holiday schedule, that was the first day of Songkran, the Buddhist New Year.
Yeah.
That's also a time when you know that the government officials are not going to be working. Everybody is out of work. Everybody's off playing, throwing water around. It's a joyous time in Thailand.
You're right.
And it's certainly a time also of maximum vulnerability for dissidents because something could happen. Thái Văn Đường left his house and went to a coffee shop on a local university campus where he frequently went. He was well known at that coffee shop. In fact, when we asked about him, the Thai staff knew him and were able to point it out. And we were able to obtain footage from there and other places to show, him leaving that area when he was leaving and all that.
Right.
There was really one clear path for him to take on his motorcycle going back to his house. And that is where the ambush took place. There are witnesses to the ambush who, said that cars blocked his motorcycle, both front and back.
Mhm.
And that people jumped out and chased him, and he tried to get away. He was screaming, and he was dragged into the car and taken away.
Right.
So there's no doubt about what happened. He was abducted.
Yeah.
It was also quite clear that he wasn't planning to return to Vietnam.
Right.
He had left everything at his house. He left his computer there. He left his UNHCR registered refugee
Right.
card. He
Mhm.
left other key documents. So, he just was going out to have coffee with a friend. And so he was bundled into that car. We understand now that car drove to the Lao border and sent him across the border, and he was taken to Vietnam. What is quite clear is that the Thai government authorities are very angry about this. They said, look, we had nothing to do with this. If the Vietnam government was going to do something like this, they had to come in and talk to us and ask permission. It had to be a joint operation. And let me be clear, there have been cases in the past where the Thai government has cooperated with Vietnam in grabbing dissidents and taking them back to Vietnam. However, that does not appear to be the case this time. It looks like the Vietnam authorities acted on their own. And there are parts of the Thai government that are extremely angry about that. They see this as a clear violation of sovereignty. And in fact, this reminds me a little bit of the case of the Vietnamese businessman who was taken in Germany, who was also an asylum seeker and was basically dragged away. There was a number of cases where, in that case, where German people were trying to help him, and he was finally flown back to Vietnam. Actually, and I believe in a government plane. So, this is a case of a government committing an act of transnational repression, chasing someone across a border and seizing him and dragging him back. We believe that they probably did this because Thai Vang Duong was getting information from inside Vietnam that he was putting out on his Facebook and sending around. Somebody was feeding him information about the political developments and things going on inside Vietnam. And I think the Vietnam authorities wanted to find out who Thai Vang Duong's sources were. But, quite clearly, this is something which has caused a major irritation in relations between Thailand and Vietnam. And as it should, because this is, a rights abusing seizure of a person who is a refugee. This person should not have been taken back to Vietnam, and the Vietnam authorities need to explain what they did.
Right. Okay. So obviously the Thai government is really angry and irritated. But would they do anything in terms of diplomatic or even some kind of punishment?
It's hard to say. That's a good question. I think that the investigation will be completed, and then it will be a decision for the new Thai government to take. I think that this government that is incoming, led by the Move Forward Party, is probably more likely to do something. We're going to be asking them to do that for sure. But a lot of this is going to happen behind closed doors. The negotiations. It may be that Vietnam has to give some sort of concession to Thailand to say, I'm sorry. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't get Thai Vang Duong back to safety. It doesn't help him. He is back in the clutches of the Vietnam justice system or injustice system. And I expect that at the end of this, he will face a long prison term.
Right. In fact, we really worry for them because we haven't heard from him at all ever since he being kidnapped. Thưa quý vị, vừa rồi chúng tôi hỏi là cái việc mà ông Thái Văn Đường bị mất tại Bangkok, thì chính ông Phil Robertson cũng chia sẻ là ông có đến tận cái nơi mà anh Thái Văn Đường bị bắt, thì ông đã chứng minh được rằng ông Thái Văn Đường bị bắt cóc bởi nhà cầm quyền Việt Nam. Và ông cũng đưa ra một cái chi tiết là chính quyền Thái Lan cũng rất là giận dữ về cái hành vi là vi phạm chủ quyền của Thái Lan, đến tận Thái Lan để mà bắt một cái người mà tị nạn. Đây là một cái hành vi mà ông nghĩ là cái chính quyền mới của Thái Lan sẽ có những cái động thái để mà chấm dứt những cái hành vi này. Mr. Robertson, I know that you know that we have nearly 2,000 Vietnamese refugees in Bangkok. And some of them was on the government of Vietnam wanted list too.
Yes.
Should we worry for these refugees, and what can we or Human Rights Watch do to help to protect them?
Well, I think it is a concern. I mean, I'm not sure that all of them are at immediate risk.
Right. Okay.
But what is quite clear is that people who are UNHCR registered refugees in Thailand cannot stay here indefinitely. They need to receive third country resettlement.
Right.
They need to be able to get to a place that's safe. And unfortunately, Thailand is no longer safe for Vietnamese refugees. It's too easy to do the sort of thing that was done to Thai Bang Duong.
Right.
That doesn't mean that they're targeting everybody to do that. I don't want to cause panic. I don't think that, there's a plan to send everybody back.
Right.
I think, in fact, there is, some selection. I mean, he was targeted very clearly, I think, because he was, bringing out interesting information that the authorities in Vietnam wanted to find out who was talking to him.
Right.
And when they took him, they took his phone, and I'm sure that they went through all the contacts on that phone and got everything they could from that phone. So, quite clearly he was targeted. But that doesn't change the bottom line, that the people who are registered refugees in Thailand need to be able to go to a third country, wherever that is.
Right.
And so what I would say to the Vietnamese living overseas, is encourage the U.S. government and other governments to accept these people, to move with some degree of speed in making sure that they are able to leave Thailand and get to safety, to make sure that there is continued pressure on the Thai government to protect them and not make them vulnerable to this kind of action by Vietnamese authorities, or, as we've seen in the past, cooperate with the Vietnamese authorities. Because there were certainly cases during the military government in Thailand that took power in 2014. There was a number of years where there was active cooperation to target Vietnamese refugees in Thailand, and the Thai government was involved in that. And that is outrageous and unacceptable. So, I think there needs to be a greater voicing of concern for this community, and recognizing that they need to be able to get out. Now, the other thing I would say is that the U.S. State Department has recently introduced a program where people can come together and sponsor refugees to come to the United States. And I think people should be actively looking at that. What can the Vietnamese community do to help refugees be able to go to the United States?
Yes, sir. And I agree. And I know that the U.S. government have the private sponsorship program. And I know that at least 60 or 80 groups of Vietnamese in the U.S. have started the process to be certified as a private sponsors group. And hopefully they can help sponsor those refugees. Thưa quý vị, vừa rồi chúng tôi cũng đưa ra cái lo ngại là đồng bào tị nạn của chúng ta tại Thái Lan cũng có cái nguy cơ trở thành nạn nhân của cái chính sách mà như là bắt cóc của nhà cầm quyền Việt Nam. Thì ông Phil Robertson, ông cũng lo ngại như chúng ta, nhưng mà ông nói mặc dù là không phải tất cả mọi người tị nạn đều là ở trong cái tầm nhắm của chính quyền Việt Nam, nhưng mà ông càng ngày ông càng thấy là ở Thái Lan cái sự mà an toàn của người tị nạn cũng không được bảo đảm. Và ông hy vọng là chúng ta, cộng đồng người Việt tại nước ngoài, nhất là tại Hoa Kỳ, tìm đủ mọi cách để vận động chính quyền Hoa Kỳ đưa những đồng bào tị nạn của chúng ta đi định cư tại nước thứ ba, và đồng thời lên tiếng với chính phủ Thái Lan tìm đủ mọi cách để bảo vệ người tị nạn. Mr. Robertson, thank you for your time, sir. And I'm looking forward to talk to you more on this subject, and wish you a wonderful time in Thailand.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm happy to come back on anytime you'd like.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye bye, sir. Xin kính chào quý vị, và chúng tôi xin hẹn tái ngộ với quý vị trong tuần tới.